And
Yeah.
all the,
Oh,
and I say there's no world-class anybody who doesn't have a coach. But when it comes to business, people think, oh, I don't need that, right? It's an expendable. It's not an essential.
I agree with
But
you.
who's going to hold that mirror up to you, right?
Oh, 100%. It's funny. We in the culture of when I grew up, you were to go go to high school, go to college, get a job, go work for somebody, climb the ladder. When you get to the top of the ladder, you look at the building on the top, and it's not yours. I never wanted that for myself. Like, why do I want to build a company for someone that when I get to the top, I'm not a part of it. So I always was big on, if I'm going to do something with someone, I'm going to share it with them. And I actually share it equally with people. Like I'll bring people in and say, if we get somewhere, I'll just split everything with you. And I find like the energy towards that's amazing, because that's not the way you were brought up. You were strict, go to work, go to school, go to college, get a job. I mean, it's like sleepwalking through life. I heard a quote by Warren Buffett. He said, are you going to sleepwalk through life like that? Or would you wait till you're 72 to have an orgasm? I don't think so,
Right. Thank you for that visual. No, but it's so true. There's a culture of lack. Not only do we have to go it alone and never be vulnerable, but we also have to grab hold and hold on tight everything that comes our way, as though there wasn't enough for everybody. And I think that, what do you think, Mike, that drives so much of these behaviors?
I think healthy behaviors are driven by a fellowship. Like you want to feel like you're doing it together. I mean, I can't imagine not going into a field that I didn't have a passion for. It's funny, when I had my first job with Milliken, I'll go back to it, I looked around at all the people that were in their 60s, and I said to myself, that's not the life I want. And that's when I went into the entrepreneurship. I said, you know what? I got to go out on my own here, because this just doesn't work for me. I'm looking at that and saying, you know what? The culture's not right. I'll go create the culture. If you become the culture, if you become Good News Only, it's amazing how everybody will embrace it. And the ones that don't embrace it are basically, I mean, they're challenging themselves. That's my feeling. I mean, I've had so many fun experiences in my career. From when I was a kid, I used to go to the Kentucky Derby. I convinced my buddy to make Kentucky Derby T-shirts, mind you, with no licensing agreement, no licenses at all from the city of Louisville or Kentucky. And his mother said, John, do you think you should be giving Mike all this money to buy 1,200 T-shirts? That's a lot of money. Mike can do it. I know he can. And we went down to the Kentucky Derby in a car. We went into a Motel 6 where they left the light on for us. And we had 1,200 shirts the day before the marathon. We went a week early to try to sell them. We kept staring at all these shirts inside the Kentucky Derby. But I never, ever, ever thought I wouldn't sell them. So I somehow found an RV park, went into the RV park. I sold 2/3 of the shirts to an RV park around the corner, because the day before the Kentucky Derby, they have a thing called the Oaks. But I think it's just a spirit of like, just you're grinding. You have it sitting there. You've got a risk here. You've got to accomplish getting this risk off the table to make it a benefit. Because on the other side of fear and challenge is a beautiful horizon. So I always think that way. I always thought that way, even as a kid. And sure enough, I sold those shirts. I sold every one. I had a lot of cash in my pocket. I felt like I was rich. And I'm certain I spent it before I got home.
Well, at least you enjoyed the ride on the way, right?
Yeah, the journey, you have to enjoy the journey.
So when something actually does happen, right? You have, I'm sure, experienced your shares of Category 5 situations.
Yeah.
What's the process? I mean, do you have room for the feelings? Do you experience that? And how quick is the turnaround for you? Back to GNO.
Yeah, back to GNO. Yeah, I do, actually. I mean, I can even tell you in the current state, I ship clothing to retailers across America. And during this pandemic, if I shipped millions and millions of dollars without sharing the amount, those people who I ship to are not paying their bills right now. And then I have the other, in my seasonal business, I have the other half that I'm supposed to ship that they canceled all their orders. So you're sitting there with millions of dollars of lack of receivables. So what do? You just figure it out. You put yourself in the right mindset. You don't go into a hole. You work with people. You work through things. I always say you build a bridge and get over it. You have a conscious circle of people for advice. You have CFOs, you have CTOs. You all get together as a leadership team and you manage it. And if it works, which I believe it will, then you just get over the challenge, because you got to get through challenges, because with each one you learn from it and you grow. You just have to fall forward. I always tell my kids in their 20s, they're all in their 20s. I'm saying, you know what, take all the risk you can, because you can't fall far from the ground.
Right on. Right. Amen. I got so many hallelujahs and amens in this conversation. I just, I'm just soaking it all up, taking tons of notes. I hope that our listeners are too. And I really want to see, what you're saying to the entrepreneurs that you mentor, because you've had a lot of business experience. And, I don't doubt that somebody in your position is going to figure this out now. But for these, startups and small businesses and people living on a very thin edge, what kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, I think the main thing is to let them know that they should take as much advice as they can and gather it, and then actually vet the information they're getting from people. And as a mentor, I'm always telling them to continue to learn and continue to take risk and to continue to challenge themselves in all phases of the business, whether it be personally, physically, mentally, and then research your clients or your customers so that you can find, as a super fan. I think we've even talked about this before. You could find your 1,000 fans and sell them $1,000 each. You have $1 million business. And you have to tell them that the key is to believe and achieve. And if you don't believe in it, you will never achieve it. So I always look at it. Anthony Robbins used to say, if you took a table and you put 4 legs under it, it wouldn't wobble. But if you took one leg away, which I represent beliefs, then it would start to wobble. I need to have as many table legs of belief. And I try to tell my mentors the good part of what they're doing. And when they have a bad part, I try to work them through it to make it so where it can be turned into a learning good. And I'm always encouraging them and trying to help them with believe. And if they believed once, they're going to believe it all the way through.
I hear you. And that's what we hope, right? And these are tough times. I mean, the thing about it is we are all in this together. It's a global situation. So nobody's coming through it unscathed. And we get to decide who we're going to be on the other side of it.
Yeah, I actually call it the fear virus, because, so many people are really in a fear, not only for their own health, but what that new world's going to look like. And honestly, there's no MBA, Christine, for what you and I are experiencing. Hurricane. Right. This is like another kind of hurricane. I was in New York City during 9/11. I had an office 20 streets up the road from it. And I was there that day. And every time I think about it, on that day, I do a couple things. I'm grateful for the people I was with. I call every one of them and say, wow, what a day that was. I get my goosebumps because I really I feel that day so often. And, you reflect from it. And now all of a sudden we have the pandemic. We will be looking at this down the road as a place where we learned a lot about ourselves. We're able to grow and think about it is together. It is about leading with love and togetherness, because other fellows first is the main thing to think of. You're thinking about yourself. You know what? Don't do that, because if you think about others first, then guess what? You're going to be okay, because you're going to pull yourself through focusing on other people. That's
I can't think of a better place to end our show today, and just let everybody know that there are so much wisdom here. I hope you'll listen over and over again, because there's so much to take away from this conversation. And I'm so grateful to have Mike NICKLAS as our guest, the GNO, Good News Only guy. And we look forward to having you again next week. So stay tuned, everybody, and come back and let's get to the part 2 of this conversation.
Thank you, Christine.